Kyle Carpenter, the youngest and most recent Congressional Medal of Honor winner, got up and spoke on Friday night, and not only gave one of the best speeches, but like his whole presence, his whole demeanor just took the air out of the whole place. Gets in. If any of you guys aren't familiar with him, take a few seconds, Google his name, read about the story. 21-year-old Marine on a rooftop in, some godforsaken country, in the Middle East. And, they're, hand-to-hand fighting. It's this, war. And all of a sudden a grenade gets thrown up on the roof. And without a second thought, he dives on the grenade to save his buddy. And basically blows himself up. And, jaw gone, face messed up, missing his eye, arm shredded. And then goes through, they were able to stabilize him, get him to a med vac, get him into a hospital, get him into Germany. And he goes through this 4-year arduous process of reconstructing. And, when he was flying back to Germany, they called his mom, said, "Hey, can you bring us any pictures? So we know what he looks like. So when we go reconstruct his face, we can do justice." I mean, when I heard that, I was like, oh my God. And just the thing that really just knocked me off my feet, just really as a dad, just seeing this, this 21-year-old kid put into this situation and thinking man, young men go and fight wars, this pretty innocent, pretty nice kid who, not married, no girlfriend. It's basically him and his mom, and he goes off to war and this happens. And just his optimism and lack of bitterness and, positivity. And when you meet him, he he's obviously has a fake eye. He looks you in the eye and takes this just, arm that they reconstruct because you can see the skin grafts, and shakes your hand. And it's just an inspiring story, and just the testament to the will of humanity and the will of a very young individual. And, but yeah, it was just, dude, that really hit me home, thinking this 21-year-old kid serving his country, and this happens, and, what his next 4 years looks like. And, just going through and reading his story, and then going back and reading all of the stories of all the Congressional Medal of Honor winners. And I think that, the fraternity, I know they refer to as such, but just reading these harrowing experiences, it's pretty amazing. And I and we've discussed it on the podcast, and I've put this out there. I'm never convinced that I believe there are great men, but I believe that greatness is bestowed upon average men just put in these just harrowing experiences, and, put in circumstances where they either die or they don't, and it's if you talk about our presidents, for example, Abraham Lincoln, was he just this amazing person that happened to be there at this moment, or was he just an ordinary man trying to do what he thought was best in that moment? And I kind of believe in the latter. Here's this young kid who's just doing his job. And the other one that kind of broke my heart is when he said, the Marines don't love us, or the U.S. military doesn't love the Marines, so they slept on the ground for 7 months, and he hadn't showered in 7 months. So when he woke up and he was in a bed and had been showered, he was like, oh man, this is something kind of new.
Oh, dang.
So he was super nice dude, man. I was honored to hear him speak, and stoked that I got a chance to, shake his hand and talk to him for a few moments.
Yeah, and he introduced a term, and I always appreciate this about speakers, is when he is listening to other people present before him, and he aims to pull their presentation or conversation into his, and that shows how invested he was in this opportunity. And the term that he pulled out was perspective.
Yeah.
And the circumstance in which he had all these opportunities that he presented that gave him clarity and perspective. We're communicating to nurses or his mom. So all these people helped him maintain this fight, this positive attitude throughout, and he was not willing to listen to the negative voice in his shoulder, willing to fight for healing. And that was a powerful piece that he was in today, because we all have that voice, but he was not willing to give in.
Well, the story that, as a parent, was pretty much knocked us off our feet was, you know, he was a couple years in on this and he was at home and, you know, they've been going to rehab and doing all this deal trying to get him back. And all of a sudden his mom goes to sleep and he's by himself for the first time. And it's been years since he's been by himself because he's like, you're never alone as a Marine. And, you know, never alone in the hospital because there's doctors and this and the whole deal. And he finds himself in the kitchen by himself and he thinks, I want some cereal. And then he goes in and he's like trying to get the milk out, trying to pour. And he realizes that he can't use his hands and he's not strong enough. And he like just breaks down and has that moment. And his mom hears him crying. She runs out and hugs him. And his statement was, you know, who's ever going to love me looking like this? Who's ever going to love me? Like I can't do anything. And like, oh man, like you could have taken, I mean, nobody took a breath for a few minutes. Like hearing that as a parent and realizing like, you know, like, yeah, it's just heartbreaking to think. I think all too often, especially with the military and these guys, you know, you kind of imagine these, you know, these soldiers going over and doing, you know, this task and, you know, and then you have to remember that, you know, they're 21-year-old kids who, you know, just want to go out and have a beer with their friends and, you know, live a normal life. And then something like this happens and he gets thrown into this, you know, this terrible situation. And he does the one thing which he thinks is right, which is to save his buddy and sacrifice himself, which pretty much for me is like, I mean, if that's all we knew about him, he gets a Congressional Medal of Honor, which in this country is the highest honor you can receive. But having read his story and Dakota Meyer and all these other guys who are Congressional Medal of Honor winners, take a moment, do a Google search, and go back and read. Some of the Vietnam stories are absolutely amazing. Like if you saw them in a movie, you'd be like, "There's no fucking way. This is total bullshit." Like the stories are like Hollywood couldn't write stuff better than this. I mean, that kid's story, Hollywood couldn't write something, and that should be a Hollywood movie. Because it would be inspiring instead of, you know, glorifying and give people perspective on what we're doing.
Yeah, and his book is titled "You Are Worth It."
Yeah,
and he, didn't do. Well, I'll sell it for him. He didn't talk about the book. He just talked about his experience, life, and perspective. But yeah, wasn't in it to push the book. But that is
well. The other cool thing is he didn't talk about what led to him winning the Congressional Medal of Honor. Like he didn't talk about, there I was and I heard that, you know,
you're right.
He stopped, or he started with, I was laying there and I thought I was in a hot tub of warm water and it was all over my body. And like, he's thinking like, why am I all wet with warm water? And then realizing that's all blood is where he started, which is after the impact. Mm-hmm. And then he took us on his journey from like that moment on a roof all the way to like, you know, where he is today. And I thought that was not only extremely classy, intelligent, and, you know, just a really ballsy way to do it, because I'm sure everywhere he goes, I mean, you know, what's pretty amazing about those guys is they get invited to be the keynote speaker and tell their story at everywhere. I mean, any Fortune 500 company that has a retreat or whatever, they invite that guy to come and speak because it's inspiring. And everybody wants to hear the story of like, how did you win the Congressional Medal of Honor? And I'm sure he's to the point where he's like, I don't want to fucking relive it because, as he said later on, I don't remember any of it. Mm-hmm. I won the Congressional Medal of Honor and I'm being, you know, heralded for this thing that I just don't remember. This is what I remember going forward. And so I thought that was extremely classy because you can get online and you can read the account and, you know, that's what he's famous for. But I think what he was trying to explain to us was the process from that moment going forward of trying to like reclaim who he was, reclaim his life, and find, you know, a place in this world. And man, that was, if Sornex had ended right then on that standing ovation, just like it would have been a home run.
I'm going back. I'm a loaded freight train and I'm right on track.